Well, good morning, everybody. Hartelijk welkom allemaal. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And one of the things that you don't get when you have a child is a manual. A book that tells you, you know, from sort of 0 to 3, 3 to 6, 6 to 9, exactly how to raise them. And if you feed them this food and you give them that sleep routine, and if you do this diet and those holidays, they will turn out fine. And each is unique. And as your children grow, they go through various phases of friendship groups, and there's so many challenges that come along the way. I spent this weekend hiking up in the mountains with somebody who works in the University of Cape Town's Student Wellbeing Department, and just talking about how there's been, since COVID, just a massive explosion in enormous well-being needs and the need for counseling, and particularly in that environment, many students who are top achievers and you know, want to be the very best, and the stresses that places on them, and the levels of depression and anxiety and so on that are a consequence of that. So we're seeing worldwide just a huge upswing in emotional needs, and so it would be a great pleasure to welcome Cornel from Merwe to join us, and she's got a wealth of experience in counselling in our community. And just thank you so much. You work with a number of our families already, and you've got one of those rare qualities in our modern world, wisdom.
Oh, thank you. I guess it comes with age. Thank you very much.
So welcome, Cornel.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you very much. Well, welcome everybody at our social group. So this is very nice. You were socializing this morning already without even knowing it. But yeah, Cindy asked me to give a talk on social skills, and when I was working on the talk, I realized it's very difficult to focus on less rather than on more, because I think social skills is such a complex behavior that one can easily get lost into the into the nitty-gritty of what exactly it means. So I'm going to try to keep it simple, but also try to stress the importance of social skills. Okay, so maybe just starting off with a little video to see what children think of friendships and what friendships means to them.
No. Oh. It's when somebody meet each other and they just start to really like them. Friendship is a thing that's between people that you really, really like. Stay with them and play with them. Run around together and play tag together, play hide and seek together.
That's okay. More. But they're very cute. Okay, so if we start with what is social skills. So social skills is what we use every day to interact and to communicate with others. So it includes verbal communication, non-verbal communication, speech, gestures, facial expressions, body language. And it's interesting to know that with communication, that non-verbal communication accounts for 80% of our communication rather than the verbal communication. And then we realize how important a lot of other facets is when we are in interaction with other people. Also, what I can add there that I didn't say there is a lot of other facets that's to keep the context in mind, to have theory of mind where you can mentalize about what somebody else is feeling or thinking in this situation. Reading the room, so there's a lot of other aspects that's also included there. So parents want 3 fundamental things for their children. They want their children to have close and deep, meaningful, significant relationships with other people. They desperately want their child to progress developmentally, language-wise, behavior, and to have long-lasting relationships. And they want their child to survive and thrive in a very difficult world. Once they're 18 years old and they leave our homes, I think all parents just want their children to be adapted to the outside world and have a good life. And obviously social skills is important for all of those. So why is socializing so important? It's practice that that we need at every stage of our life. It's a practice that we need. It's also interesting to know that, and I presume everybody's got primary school children here, but the whole primary phase of children developmentally is about socializing. So up until the age of 6, 7, there's a lot of other emotional developmental stages that they need to go through. But the whole, and it's preparing them that for the whole primary years up until grade 7, it's about getting that skill of socializing, forming networks, forming friendships, being part of a group, not being part of a group, how to join friendship groups, how to manage conflict and stuff like that. So it's crucial to a child's physical and emotional well-being, and allow kids to build skills that will help them be confident and also autonomous later in life. And I think the one thing that really stands out for me is the confidence. And since we've started the social skills at the practice in the program, the one thing I was focused on, we need to teach these children and assist them with social skills because it's actually such a complex human behavior. I didn't account for the confidence of the children that's really going to improve. And after a while, when we got feedback from the parents, what was very interesting is the first thing they said was, wow, my child has got so much more confidence, even from the teachers. And that was absolutely wonderful to hear and not really realizing, but obviously if you've got the skill and you know what to do, and you get rewarded by that through more solid friendships, the confidence is so much better of the child. So that was really very nice to know. It's also important to prepare children to practice in a social group by teaching them norms and expectations. And I think that is so important. I always say that there's two parents to a child. They've got their biological parents, and that's us, and we can teach our children some stuff, but then there's a life out there that teach your children where you stop, life takes over. So we expose our children to life outside so that they can learn. And a great thing of that is the norms and expectations of what life will expect of you. So it's also important because children who have good social relationships obviously have a greater self-esteem than those who do not. It's essential, this is just a light bulb moment, so something that's very interesting. It's essential that social skills are developed at a very young age, and that connections begin to form. And there's the little Baba. I was looking at the little Baba and realizing it's actually awesome if we think that social skills already developing with that little baby the moment the baby was born. So and up until the age of 3 years, the neural network is very open to growth. From the age of 3 years, we're already losing some of those networks or neurons by pruning. So up until the age of 3 years, it's so important to really focus also, even with a little person like that, on the social skills. So socializing can have significant effects on a child's mental, physical, and emotional well-being. We know that. We know the devastation of children that struggles with their socializing and how they end up being so isolated and even depressed and anxious. And if a child doesn't socialize for an extended period of time, they can become overly anxious and then end up avoiding. And I think that Deirdre and me were talking this morning, and I think what we're trying to work against is that they end up being more restricted. So these children for whom socializing and social skills doesn't come naturally find it very anxious to be social and to socialize. So a common or natural human behavior is that when we feel anxious about something, we want to avoid it. We don't want to become part of it. So these children often end up very isolated, and it becomes more restricted and more restricted. And what we want to do, growing those social networks and social neural networks, is to expand. So we have to work against that in a very protected environment, but they have to expand and not get more restricted and more restricted. Okay, so maybe you have sensed that your child doesn't quite fit in with other kids at school or in your neighborhood or wherever. So you look at them talking and laughing, playing and living life at a little bit of a different speed than other children do. Or perhaps your child even feels out of step with within your own family. Maybe other children to treat your child a little bit differently, or maybe other children tease, shy away, or even avoid your child. So again, the child who struggles with social situations, social skills, will end up being more isolated or even excluded from that very important friendship circles. Okay, so social interaction and communication can be a challenge for a child, and I think what is so important to just remember always that this creates very high levels of anxiety. And unfortunately, it works against each other because the more anxious you are, the more you want to avoid. So the very thing that they need and they want friends, they want to be part of a circle, is the thing that creates anxiety. And what do we do when we're anxious? We avoid. So they end up really in a very difficult situation, just sitting with this high levels of anxiety. So one condition that can affect the way that you think, you learn, you communicate, you behave, and you will notice that there's a lot of factors there, are called autism spectrum disorder, where a spectrum obviously refers to a wide range of symptoms and severity. So people with autism may have some type of difficulty with communication, and even communication is then, there's a lot of different factors in terms of communication. Or they can have difficulty with their social skills, or what we call social interaction patterns. They can also, there might also be difficulty with how they enjoy activity and interests, and we all know the fixations where they tend to fixate on certain objects or on certain things, and where there's repetitive behavior. So also a lot of different factors in terms of that. So these difficulties may be mild, very mild, or it might be more serious. So I know that the professor in Belgium, I forgot his name now, but he refers to not autism, but an autism, or a kind of autism. Or somebody's got different kinds of autisms, just referring to where the difficulty with behavior might lie. So every autism, as we know, are unique. So ASD refers to, and I think this is a very important difference that we actually don't know or forget about, is that the social ASD doesn't refer to a person or a child who doesn't have social communication or can't talk or can't speak, as we used to think of them, but it refers to the quality of social interaction. So a lot of times I would find parents that would say to me, yeah, but my child's got friends, my child doesn't have a problem talking to other people. But that's not the criteria, that's not the problem. The problem is the quality of that social interaction. So like most things in psychology, we've got the two ends. So it's either too much or it's too less. It's like the Goldilocks story. Where a poor quality of social, so it can either be a poor quality of social interaction by avoiding, by very restrictive social interaction, or it can also refer to the child who doesn't have a sense of boundaries and are sort of in your face or talk too much, or doesn't have a sensitivity for when to keep quiet or how to engage. So that is also a poor quality of social interaction. So did you know that people with ASD behave differently from what we call typical or the neurotypical? And therefore, because it's different, it's not wrong, it's different, we refer to that as being neurodiverse. So I like to talk about either the brain is neurotypical or the brain is neurodiverse, rather to go into nitty-gritty of ASD, which we can do by all means. But there's two clusters for me that we get neurotypical people, absolutely just referring to they don't have any problems with their social interaction, they love it, it doesn't cause them any anxiety. And then you get your neurodiverse group that finds social interaction and social situations creating a lot of anxiety. Okay, so neurodiverse refers to a range of differences in the individual brain function and behavioral traits regarded as part of normal variation of the human population. So being neurodiverse or having ASD is a neurodevelopmental condition. So it's got nothing to do with your personality. It's a neurodevelopmental condition referring to the way the brain is wired in terms of the neural network. So I always say to the children, explaining that to them, is that sometimes your brain has got a gravel road or it's got a tar road. So the gravel road, guys, just follows your car, and your brain just follows a little bit of a different route. It's a little bit slower to get to exactly the same point because you are traveling on a gravel road. So the other guys who doesn't find any difficulty in terms of their social environment has got a tar road. They easily come to the point, no problem for them. So the destination is exactly the same, the route is just a little bit different. And therefore also referring back to the processing time for these guys is different in the sense that it's a little bit slower. They get to the same point, but it's just a little bit slower. So there are many differences in the ways people's brains work. There's no correct or incorrect way. So these differences, we really try to say that we embrace differences and we look at the strengths that these people bring to the table. Okay, so in terms of, if we know that social skills and social interaction is so important, obviously the question is going to be, so what do we do about it? How does the intervention look like? So everything you do can make a difference for your children, just to remember. It can be very hard to deal with neurodiverse children. It can be a great challenge, but there's also a lot of humor and a lot of great times where we really celebrate small little things that other children find very naturally. With these children, it is absolutely wonderful. They've got such an interesting and a wonderful way of looking at life. Sometimes you may want to give up, or you'll think that this is just too hard for me, I'm not going to try any longer. We get that. So, social skills training is about helping the child to learn and face these emotional challenges. In the end, to improve the communication and the social skills, not just at home, but also at school and then in the wider community or in the outside world. That's okay. That we don't lose a signal. While she's trying to find it, I think the other thing that we realized is when we work with a neurodevelopmental condition and we talk about neurons and forming new neural pathways, it's about repetition. So that's exactly the way that learning takes place. Obviously we know that the more you practice and the more you repeat, the more you learn. And it's no difference with the social skills. So a big part of teaching social skills is about repetition, but also then how to implement it, not just in that moment, but to generalize it and to know how to use those skills in different situations.
Please dive for navigating too much to eat. Some days life can be challenging. Seems to match you really. Sometimes you must declare it's all too much to eat. Too much processed, too much to see, too much to handle, too much cat pee. I don't even own a cat. When you look at life and too muchery abounds, pause, listen to your breath and the way that sounds. Reach out to people, all the friends you can think of, because absurd times calls for absurd amounts of love. So remember, dear friend, there's no need to worry. Together we are more than enough for all that you met me.
That was so cute for me, and that tomatery word became quite a popular word for us. So it's so nice to say to somebody, it's just tomatery, it's just tomatery. And then they know what we mean. Okay, so in terms of if any of this resonates and we have a concern about social skills, which I actually think all children must do, especially in today's era of the technology. I think it's a big problem is we find that the children doesn't learn how to use these social skills. So we are up against a big challenge as parents, especially where they would sit in the same room, we know this, and they would WhatsApp the person across them on the couch, and I'm like, well, what are you doing? I'm talking to my brother. I don't understand now because you're sitting there and he's sitting there. I don't get it. You didn't use any word. No, but what's the, no, this is not, this is not how we do it. So yeah, so I think that is actually a very big problem. So social skills practice is an affiliate of Paarl practice, as some of you might know. And we've been working very long on an intervention plan and trying to update and adapt the program constantly according to needs and feedback. The program is designed to improve the social skills functioning, the emotional regulation, connection and relationship development. So it's basically it's in vivo training, meaning that it's small groups of 4 or 5 or 6 children. We are working on a specific skill each week. We talk about the skill, we demonstrate the skill, they get a visual to see how the skill works. And I think why it's successful is because it's a safe environment to just work on that skill and to be able to say, safe enough space to say, I really struggle with friends. I mean, I had a teenager yesterday who said to me, I'm actually very lonely. And that was absolutely awesome to me, that he could actually acknowledge the fact that he's very lonely and he struggles with friends. So it's tailored, it's very structured play. They know exactly what to expect, what it looks like each week. We provide support and information to the parents. The parents is a very integral part when it comes to social skills. So to think that a child can learn social skills in one environment and you don't have to speak about it, you don't have to practice it, that's not going to work. So this is actually just as much for the parents. So if a skill goes home, I mean, if I say skill, we start with the little ones by teaching them the skill of how do you greet. We think every child knows that. That doesn't come naturally. We're not born, as Andy said, with this knowledge. This is stuff that we need to teach our children. So we say, hello, Elmi. And Elmi says back, and we try to say to them, try to name the person by his name, not just say hello. Hello, Elmi, and they say back, hello. And sometimes we have to do this, and I'm like, why are you doing this? I'm saying, it needs to come back. What needs to come back? You need to greet me back. We do this every week, and then you say hello, Cornel. I will go, how are you, Elmi?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm also well. So that's the basic of any starting point for social interaction. So if they can learn this, if they can make it part of themselves, we know that they've got a great chance when it comes to making friends to at least start that social interaction or that communication. It's a 1-hour session, it's structured, so we check in. Emotional regulation is constantly very important for any person, and it's also have a lot to do with our neural functioning or neural networking in the brain. Some children really struggle to regulate themselves, and obviously if you struggle to regulate yourself emotionally, it's going to be difficult to maintain a friendship or just to regulate yourself when you're in interaction with other children. So the check-in is where we check in terms of how you feel. We also ask each other, how are you feeling, how are you doing? That's part of the group share, and then we've got our skill talk. There's a watch that they can see exactly when it needs to be done, when it needs to be done, when we go over to skill talk, when it is chill time or whatever. So, and then we've got after the skill talk, and this is the part that's so interesting. This is the part that they love the most. They're forever asking, are we done yet? Are we done yet? Because we want to play. Oh my gosh, yes, let's play. So the play and the feedback is that to help them organize and interact in terms of what they're going to play. There's a big cupboard that they can choose any game that they want to play, but you have to ask somebody to play with you, or if somebody's already playing 2 children, you have to ask them if you can join. So is that a question? Sorry.
No, I'm sorry if I'm interrupting.
No,
so
no.
quick question, when is a milestone for a child to actively say, what is the age that you're looking at for a child to have that hello, Ami, hello, and that interaction?
Yes.
What age are you looking for that to happen?
By the age of 4, we really, from 4 onwards, I'm not saying that the
Okay.
day turns 4 doesn't need to be done,
Yeah.
definitely not. But from the age of 4, it really starts to be important for a child to be able to network.
Yeah.
So if you think, and Cindy would probably agree with me, grade R is actually an extremely difficult year, I find it. An extremely difficult, challenging year for children socially. because there's not really a structured formal school setting. It's very unstructured, and for children that struggles with social interaction, the unstructured situation is actually anxiety provoking, because it's that fear of I don't know what to say. It's what if somebody asks me something and I don't know how to answer, and then I avoid it. So from the age of 4, I will already start with this is how we do social interaction.
And sorry, I'm going to ask one more
Yes,
question.
anytime.
What happens if you have one partner? I'm not saying it's me. I'm just asking the question. What happens if you have one partner that does get anxious in social settings?
Yes.
So you know you're now a grown adult, and it wasn't dealt with as a child, but now
Yes.
you're dealing with one parent that is hugely anxiety driven when they are out. So how do you deal with that? Because both parents need to be on the same page.
Absolutely, and I think that's why it's so important to whatever we do in the groups goes home to the parents, and the parents has to install it by practicing the skill. And I think for a parent that is also struggling, or a sibling that's not in the groups, you can use it at home for that parent to actually practice as well. Because what the neurodiverse brain really loves is rules. They want to know, what do you expect from me? So the moment we say, this is a social rule, the brain goes, I get that. And that's why we also in communication know that we need to be very direct to the point. And not blah, 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 because they're going to say, what are you saying? Because that's the way the brain is structured. That's the language that the brain can understand. So what is so nice is sending this home. The parent that's also struggling is actually also having that script of what to do. So an interesting fact is that a lot of neurodiverse people becomes actors. There's actually really a lot of them. Why? Because there's a script. It's not a difficult career to have. There's a script, you know exactly what to do, and they get to be social to a great extent. And I think that's that thing again. I get parents, oh my goodness, I think just sorry, it's been a long time since I've seen him. So the a lot of people say to me, yes, but my child can do I step it, or they can be on a stage, and they do this thing. It's amazing. I mean, how is this possible? Yes, why? Because there's a script. I put that child in an unstructured friendship situation, not the same child. So it's important to understand it from that point of view. Does that answer your question?
Can I tell you,
Yes.
sorry, something that I thought was so brilliant at the school that my kids were at, because there's also something to be said about, of course it's about acknowledging, but some children are not so great with verbal, and that's really hard for them. So there would be this poster of really cute animal characters, and so you would choose how you want to greet back.
Absolutely.
And some of them would just point it, but then they would move through, which was quite awesome. So for the kids, like I know in my one daughter's class, even here, one is very, very touchy-feely. She loves physical, like she obviously has a physical need, and she loves hugs, but another kid will absolutely, be completely repulsed. So you can choose how you wanted to greet the teacher. So each of them would come in and enter the classroom with either they're doing a fist pump, a high five, they're communicating.
Absolutely.
So just some acknowledgement. So I think that that's also an important thing of just the respect of, because I know the grandparents and my kids cannot understand sometimes. And they're like, come, and they're like,
And it's a hug and a kiss, which is just
so effective. I'm like, just hang on, they're gonna
absolutely.
Or it's the overload. So they might have had how many hugs that morning from different people that you groomed them to do, and by midday they are exhausted.
They don't.
So then
That brain
you're waiting for that meltdown because they can't cope anymore. It doesn't come naturally.
And I think if we remember, what we said in the beginning, that the non-verbal communication accounts for 80%. You don't need to do the formal hugging, hello thing in terms of I have to hug you while I say hello. Even a low five or high five is a form of greeting. It's still a form of being social and in interaction rather than avoidance. I think the big thing is just to get these children not to avoid.
like the acknowledgement.
Yeah, because then we go into that restrictive pattern, and we're going to end up when that child is a teenager, that the child's just going to be in his room or her room.
But sometimes it's the opposite as well. So with mine, they
Yes.
don't
Yes.
withdraw.
Yes.
They in, and you have
They
to
the
pull
other
them
side,
away
yeah.
and say,
Yeah. So
I'm
they
not
don't
now.
have that sense of boundary. They
Yeah,
in
it's-
your space all
that's
over
my
you.
world, yeah.
They almost don't get enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the other side. Absolutely.
Extreme.
Yeah, the other extreme. Yeah, it's interesting that it works to both extremes.
Yes.
Yeah, and if we remember again, it's the quality. So that would be not a very good quality of social interaction. Yeah.
Kan ek vra Cornel wil jy eers klaar?
Nee, glad nie.
So how do you work with teenagers where it's not cool to do those things? Because on the one hand my son says, well, nobody compliments me on my new shirt, they just say I look ugly, and on the other side, and when I say to him, like, do you ever compliment kids? No, that's very gay. So, how do you deal with that? What's normal for a teenager?
Very difficult. As I said, we learn as far as we go, and we've really been struggling with getting teenage groups going. So this year we realized we redid the whole inside of the room to make it more cool and bohemian. So we've got booths and we've got a coffee table, just to try and be more open to the teenagers. And they like to recognize it. And but the moment you say group, they go no. I didn't even tell you about the group, no. So very difficult. So now we changed the word for the teenagers to a chill room. Just please come and chill, because I will pay you to come. We do not make the teenage groups. Very difficult, but once they are there, we see that some things happen. There's like the teenager yesterday. I mean, that's a grade 12 learner who said, I am so lonely. Because again, it's a safe environment. But teenagers are a specimen on their own, so we're going to need a whole new talk on teenagers.
Do you think it's possible we may need to be looking at this a bit wider, because the society we live in, we try to push our kids into molds and make them all to the same efficient. I feel we're programming kids from a very young age, which doesn't make them feel safe when they're different from the norm.
Yes.
But what is normal? We decide together what is normal, and I find this as beautiful as the work is that you're doing. I find it very painful that we don't speak about these things
Yes,
enough.
absolutely.
Yes, because here it's normal to hug people.
Yeah.
In Spain, nobody
No hugging.
hugs.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's why it's so beautiful to also think of normal. I absolutely hate the word abnormal, but being on a spectrum, and that we really embrace the word different. There's no wrong. I'm different to you, you're different to me, and I want people to embrace the difference. The one common denominator is social interaction. Doesn't matter what culture, doesn't matter where, because it's the one thing that defines us from animals. It's the one thing that we need to survive.
Can I add one more?
Yes.
In indigenous cultures, the people that are slightly different are the ones that are showing the group that there's something off. So I think Andy started very well with saying the level of depression. I think these depressed people and kids are showing us that our societies are actually sick, that the normal is sick.
Yes.
I do agree, social interaction is what we all need, because otherwise we die of loneliness. But I would hope that we start to have that bigger conversation as well.
Yes. I think we are, it's relatively new for South Africa. I think overseas is a little bit ahead in terms of acknowledging this and really trying to focus on that. But there's definitely a movement to what you are saying, and I am extremely relieved that that is the case. But we pick up that a lot of children are struggling because of these different influences, and as I said, technology is really not working with us, it's working against us in that sense, in the social interaction sense. No, you do, but you also like friends. Yes. I want you to have human friends and not technical friends.
Thank you.
Oh, you're gonna miss the warm touch of a human. So yeah, that is absolutely our struggle, because if you think of humans, we've got basic emotional needs. And I always say to parents that there's two things that's important for me. as a human being, you have to be able to acknowledge your own emotional needs. And it happens most of the times unconsciously, sometimes consciously. But then when that need is there, you need to be able to be in an interaction pattern with another human being to fulfill that need. Like if I have a need I'm thinking of my best friend, and I think, sure, I wonder how she's doing. I phone her, I say, what about a cup of coffee? We drink a coffee, it was so nice. I get home, my husband asks, how was your day? Oh, it was awesome, I saw Selena. What happened there? I had a need, I did something in a social interaction pattern, and I fulfilled my need, frustration's low. And that's the thing that we need to get going. That answers.
And it's also not just conforming, you know, with society. It's also, I think, it's a skill they have to learn to interact. It's not just taking the whole time. So if you have a conversation, it's how are you doing?
Yes.
And teaching them that skill that's not about them. So it's sort of working on that ego.
Yes,
That ego
absolutely.
the whole time that does not come naturally. It's
Absolutely.
all about me, and that's the wiring that is
Yes.
a little more different.
Yes.
They can't see anything else but themselves and their own needs, and so that's why it affects friendships. So when they're feeling grotty, oh gee, everyone must run. And that's not how it works. You know, I mean, that day can be the most destructive day and ruin everything, you know, destroy everyone else's day. So I think it's not conforming to society's needs.
Yeah.
It's teaching, it's guiding them to be able to interact and be part of society.
And I love that interaction, but I think it's the exact opposite. The spirit of each of us is beaten out of us, not literally, from a very young age. And I would like my kids to preserve their spirit without being egoistic